The world lost a true legend on March 21, 2025, when George Edward Foreman peacefully passed away at the age of 76, surrounded by his loving family. While the exact cause of his death remains undisclosed by his family, they shared that he peacefully departed on March 21, 2025, surrounded by loved ones. But George Foreman's story isn't one of endings, it's one of incredible beginnings, second chances, and the power of transformation that continues to inspire millions around the world. Born on January 10, 1949, in Marshall, Texas, George Foreman's early life was far from the success story we came to know. Growing up in the tough neighborhoods of Houston's Fifth Ward, young George was no stranger to hardship. His childhood was marked by poverty, absent fathers, and the kind of struggles that either break a person or forge them into something extraordinary. For George, it would be the latter, though the path to greatness was anything but straightforward. The turning point came when George discovered boxing through the Job Corps program. It was here that his raw talent and devastating power first emerged. Standing at 6 feet 4 inches tall with the build of a heavyweight and fists that could change destinies, George quickly rose through the amateur ranks. His crowning amateur achievement came at the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City, where he captured the gold medal in heavyweight boxing. The image of young George waving that small American flag after his victory became iconic, symbolizing hope and patriotism during a tumultuous time in American history. Turning professional in 1969, George Foreman's rise in the heavyweight division was nothing short of meteoric. His fighting style was brutally simple yet devastatingly effective. He would stalk his opponents like a predator, using his incredible reach and bone-crushing power to systematically break them down. Fight after fight, opponent after opponent fell to his thunderous punches. The boxing world took notice, and it wasn't long before George earned his shot at the ultimate prize. On January 22, 1973, in Kingston, Jamaica, George Foreman faced the seemingly invincible Joe Frazier for the heavyweight championship of the world. Frazier, the man who had defeated Muhammad Ali, was expected to handle the young challenger with relative ease. What happened next shocked the boxing world and announced George Foreman as a force of nature. In just 2 rounds, George knocked down Joe Frazier 6 times, battering the champion so thoroughly that the fight was stopped. At 24 years old, George Foreman was the heavyweight champion of the world, and his fearsome reputation was cemented. But perhaps no moment in George Foreman's career is more remembered than the legendary Rumble in the Jungle against Muhammad Ali in Zaire on October 30, 1974. George entered that fight as the overwhelming favorite, younger, stronger, and carrying the knockout power that had demolished every opponent in his path. Ali, at 32, was considered past his prime by many experts. The fight was set to be George's coronation as the undisputed king of heavyweight boxing. Instead, it became one of the most stunning upsets in sports history. Using his famous rope-a-dope strategy, Ali absorbed George's powerful punches while leaning against the ropes, allowing the aggressive champion to exhaust himself in the oppressive African heat. By the 8th round, George was spent, and Ali seized the moment, knocking him out with a combination that echoed around the world. The defeat was devastating, not just professionally but personally. George had lost more than his title, he had lost his sense of invincibility. The loss to Ali sent George into a dark period. He continued boxing, but the fire that had once burned so brightly seemed dimmed. After a loss to Jimmy Young in 1977, something extraordinary happened in George's dressing room. Feeling exhausted and defeated, he experienced what he described as a spiritual awakening, a moment of divine intervention that would change his life forever. George became a born-again Christian, and in a move that shocked the boxing world, he announced his retirement to become a preacher. For the next 10 years, George Foreman completely stepped away from boxing. He dedicated his life to his faith, establishing the George Foreman Youth and Community Center in Houston, where he worked tirelessly to help at-risk youth avoid the pitfalls he had encountered in his own childhood. He became an ordained minister, preaching with the same passion and intensity he had once brought to the boxing ring. During this period, George also focused on his growing family, becoming a devoted father and husband. But the boxing world hadn't seen the last of George Foreman. In 1987, at the age of 38, he announced his return to professional boxing. The announcement was met with skepticism, ridicule, and genuine concern for his safety. Critics argued that he was too old, too out of shape, and too far removed from the sport to compete at the highest level. They saw a middle-aged man with an expanding waistline trying to recapture past glory. What they didn't see was the determination that had always defined George Foreman. His comeback was methodical and inspiring. Fight by fight, he proved that age and experience could be powerful weapons. His style had evolved. Gone was the reckless aggression of his youth, replaced by a more measured, technically sound approach. He had learned to use his ring intelligence and experience to maximum advantage. The culmination of his incredible comeback came on November 5, 1994, when 45-year-old George Foreman faced 26-year-old Michael Moorer for the heavyweight championship. Once again, George was the underdog, written off by experts who believed his fairy-tale comeback had gone far enough. For 9 rounds, it looked like they might be right. Moorer was ahead on the scorecards, outboxing the older challenger with superior speed and technique. But in the 10th round, with time running out and his dreams slipping away, George Foreman summoned one last moment of magic. A perfectly timed right hand sent Moorer crashing to the canvas, and suddenly, George Foreman was heavyweight champion of the world again, 20 years after losing the title to Ali. At 45 years old, he became the oldest heavyweight champion in boxing history, a record that still stands today. The victory was about more than boxing. It was about redemption, perseverance, and the power of believing in yourself when everyone else has written you off. George had proven that second acts in life are not only possible but can be even more meaningful than the first. Throughout his remarkable boxing career, George compiled an impressive record of 76 wins, 5 losses, with 68 knockouts. But perhaps his greatest victory came outside the ring, in his personal life and his relationship with his family. George was married to Mary Joan Martelly, who he married in 1985, and their marriage became one of the most enduring partnerships in sports. Mary Joan Martelly and George Foreman have been married since 1985 and have 5 children together, and their love story spanned nearly 4 decades. George's commitment to family was extraordinary. Foreman is survived by his wife and 11 children, and he famously named 5 of his sons George Jr., George III, George IV, George V, and George VI. When asked about this unique naming tradition, George would smile and explain that he wanted his sons to always remember their father's name and legacy. His 7 daughters are Natalia, Leola, Frida, Michi, Georgetta, Isabella, and Courtney, and he was equally devoted to each of them. The family faced tragedy in 2019 when Frida had a 5-1 record as a pro boxer, retired in 2001, and died in 2019 at age 42 in an apparent suicide. The loss devastated George, but it also reinforced his commitment to mental health awareness and supporting others who struggled with similar challenges. Mary Joan Martelly wasn't just George's wife, she was his anchor, his advisor, and his greatest supporter. Foreman and Martelly were married for nearly 4 decades before his death, and their relationship was built on mutual respect, shared values, and deep love. Mary Joan, who preferred to stay out of the spotlight, was instrumental in many of George's business decisions and philanthropic efforts. She supported his boxing comeback, even when others doubted, and helped him navigate the challenges of fame and fortune with grace and wisdom. Speaking of fortune, George Foreman's financial success extended far beyond his boxing earnings. While his ring career was certainly lucrative, his greatest financial triumph came from an unexpected source. A simple kitchen appliance. The George Foreman Grill became a cultural phenomenon, selling over 100 million units worldwide and generating hundreds of millions in revenue. At the time of Foreman's death on March 21, he had a reported net worth of a whopping $300 million. The grill's success wasn't just about smart marketing, it was about George's authentic personality and his ability to connect with ordinary people. His warm, grandfatherly demeanor made him the perfect spokesperson for a product that promised to make healthy cooking easier for families everywhere. The partnership between George and the Grill Company became one of the most successful celebrity endorsements in history, earning him far more than his entire boxing career combined. But money was never the driving force behind George Foreman's actions. His true passion lay in helping others, particularly young people facing the same challenges he had encountered in his youth. Through the George Foreman Youth and Community Center, he provided mentorship, guidance, and opportunities for thousands of at-risk children. His approach was hands-on and personal. He would often be found in the gym, teaching young boxers not just how to fight, but how to live with dignity and purpose. George's transformation from feared fighter to beloved father figure and successful entrepreneur made him one of the most compelling figures in American sports and culture. His story resonated with people from all walks of life because it demonstrated that it's never too late to change, to grow, and to become better than you were before. The lifestyle George Foreman lived in his later years was one of contentment and purpose. He split his time between his ranch in Texas and his various business ventures, always making family his top priority. He was known for his simple pleasures, spending time with his grandchildren, preaching on Sundays, and enjoying the barbecue that made him famous beyond the grill. Despite his wealth, George remained grounded, often speaking about the importance of staying connected to your roots and never forgetting where you came from. His daily routine in his final years reflected his values. Morning prayers, family time, business meetings conducted with integrity, and evenings spent reflecting on his blessings. George often said that his greatest achievement wasn't winning the heavyweight championship twice, but rather being a good husband, father, and grandfather. He measured success not in titles or dollars, but in the positive impact he could have on others' lives. As we reflect on George Foreman's incredible journey from troubled youth to boxing champion to successful businessman to devoted family man, we see a life that embodied the very best of the American spirit. His story reminds us that our past doesn't define our future, that second chances are possible, and that success is meaningless without love, family, and service to others. George Foreman's legacy extends far beyond the boxing ring or the kitchen counter. He leaves behind a blueprint for how to live a life of purpose, how to overcome adversity, and how to use whatever platform you have to make the world a better place. His children and grandchildren will carry forward his values of hard work, faith, and family. His businesses will continue to operate under the principles he established. Most importantly, the thousands of young people he mentored and inspired will continue to spread his message of hope and transformation. The world may have lost George Foreman on March 21, 2025, but his spirit lives on in everyone who refuses to give up, who believes in second chances, and who understands that true strength comes not from physical power, but from the courage to be vulnerable, to change, and to love unconditionally. George Foreman was more than a boxer, more than a businessman, more than a celebrity. He was a reminder that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things when they combine talent with determination, success with humility, and strength with compassion. His life was a testament to the power of transformation, the importance of family, and the endless possibilities that exist when we refuse to accept limitations. As we say goodbye to this remarkable man, we celebrate not just what he achieved, but who he became. A champion in every sense of the word, a loving husband and father, and an inspiration to millions around the world. George Foreman's story will continue to inspire future generations to dream big, work hard, and never give up on themselves or the people they love. If this story of resilience, transformation, and triumph has touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of remarkable lives. George Foreman's legacy reminds us that every ending is also a beginning, and that the best stories are the ones that inspire us to write better chapters in our own lives. Thank you for joining us in celebrating the extraordinary life of George Foreman, a true champion who proved that with faith, family, and determination, anything is possible.